mare stretched to the horizon like dead African plains. He closed his eyes and waited for the heat of the sun to be taken away from him. It was a childish thing, and he was angry as soon as he did it. "Reverse thrust on my mark," Quarles said. "Mark." Deckard fell. Lightness in his gut signaled the descent, a feeling that his body was dropping while his critical organs remained hovering above. He sucked in air and kept his eyes shut to escape from the flight and from the moon itself, but it only increased his feeling of disorientation, disembodiment. He focused on the sound of his breathing, the hiss of the regulators echoing in his helmet like a scuba diver finning through a current. Quarles wouldn't need to read the biotel to know he was scared. He'd only have to listen. The moon is soundless, and the air coming in and out of Deckard's lungs rang with evidence against him. "How we doing?" Quarles asked. "Not good." "Don't throw open your helmet." "Good advice." "No problem. 40 seconds to hop 1. Still looking nominal." "Right." They had selected Dionysus for Drill Station 7 because it had decent water trace, but also because it was accessible. It was relatively small in uniform for a lunar impact crater, an infant cosmic bullet strike of only 1 billion years or so, with a floor as smooth as a North American salt flat. Or so the selenologists had promised. Of course, those selenologists were reading topo maps back in New Mexico, so Deckard wasn't overly comforted by their assurances. He could have gone down to DS7 in a shuttle with the extra security of a reinforced titanium seat and 2 tons of superalloy surrounding him. But the jetsuit had to be tested in a live mission, and he didn't like putting his crew in prototypes. Anyways, it wasn't the method that was important now. It was the mission. There was a mystery down in the crater black and a crisis that had to be resolved. The drilling station's water rover had gone silent 14 hours ago without any warning. There was no telemetry before the crash, and no data dump to the hydrogen reduction reactor or the station's central computer. DS7 provided a quarter of Sea of Serenity 1's fresh water and oxygen. Its failure wasn't catastrophic, but the circumstances of its demise, and more important the timing, filled Deckard with dread. Why wasn't there any telemetry before a total blackout? Quarles couldn't figure it out, and neither could Thatch, and they knew those systems better than they knew their own fingernails. The only plausible explanation was a micrometeor strike, but the chances of that happening were statistically negligible. It was as if a plug had been pulled. But plugs don't get pulled on the open surface of the moon. Cold enveloped him. He opened his eyes in moon shadow and had to blink to make sure they weren't closed. On Earth, shadow isn't much more than shade, a patch of cool retreat from the constancy of the sun. On the moon, it's a pure black that can't be described, and at the bottom of a shadow-sided crater you might as well be at the starless edge of the universe. The plasma lamps on his helmet cast pinpoint beams of white that did little to obliterate the nothingness. Numbers flashing on the inside of Deckard's visor told him that the crater floor was getting closer. The altimeter dialed backward like a clock flying into the past. He couldn't see anything. "I am a coward," he thought, pushing back a wave of low-G nausea. "All the crazy shit I've done before, I was just trying to hide the goddamn truth." "Why do I always get the first crack at your chicken shit prototypes?" he asked Quarles, needing to break the silence even though he knew the answer that was coming. "Because you're the only one who gets paid enough to risk explosive decompression. Also, you volunteered." "Remind me not to do that again." Deckard looked around. "We shouldn't have tried this without infrared." "You told me to rig the helmet without FLIR so we could simulate blackout conditions," Quarles replied. "Look down and make sure Alpha is clear. Radar's not picking anything up, but we're going to need at least 20 seconds to change your trajectory if there's terrain below." Deckard craned his neck so he could see beyond the lower lip of his helmet, hoping that concentration on a task would ease the vertigo. Pilots aren't supposed to get sick, he thought. But pilots are usually inside a ship instead of free-falling in the dark. Steam from his breath left a halo of fog on the bottom of his faceplate. His headlamps moved through the surrounding blackness as he rotated them in a slow arc, but the beams were too narrow to renew his sense of up and down. He widened the circles of illumination and saw the ground. There was only fine lunar powder in the place where he was supposed to land, regolith pounded into dust by eons of cosmic barrage. "Looks like nothing but reg," Deckard said between breaths. "Small boulders, breccia, I think, about 100 meters to the north on a wrinkle ridge to the east, but Alpha looked..."